Breaking on the Celtics. New report points to an unexpected trade. Who's out? If you're a Celtics fan, I bet you've been there. You open YouTube just to see a quick piece of news, and out of nowhere, a bomb appears that could change the entire team. That's right. A new report has come out pointing to an unexpected change, and the question is straightforward. Who could be leaving? And I know the pain. We look at the cast and think, don't touch that now. But we also know that if we don't adjust what needs to be adjusted, the season could slip through the cracks. So stay with me for less than 2 minutes, because I'm going to show you what this report really says, which names make sense in this conversation, and the most likely scenario, without exaggeration or nonsense, so you understand what could happen and why. Before I show you who could be in this exchange conversation, do the following quickly because this helps the channel a lot to deliver this news to you firsthand. Sign up now and activate the bell. That way, when Celtics updates come out, you won't find out late. And leave a like, because I want to know, are you on the don't change the squad or you have to change to get stronger team? Comment in one word, exchange or keep. Closed? So come with me, because now I'm going straight to the point. What this report points out and why this exchange could be much more real than it seems. When a team starts winning games that, in theory, it shouldn't win, a curious thing happens to the fan's mind. We are happy, of course, but we are also alert, because deep down, you know, the NBA doesn't forgive anyone who gets excited at the wrong time. And that's exactly why I wanted to sit here with you calmly to talk about the current situation of the Boston Celtics and about a subject that seems simple in the headline, unexpected trade, but that, when you get into the details, turns into one of those dilemmas that can define the course of a franchise for years. Think with me. You are in a season that many people treated as a bridge year, a phase of adjustments, of survival, of holding on until the core is complete again. But suddenly, the team picks up a sequence, starts to really compete, remains in a comfortable playoff position, and, as a bonus, starts accumulating games that change the atmosphere in the locker room, change the mood of the fans, and change the way the rest of the league starts to look at you. This is where the question arises that separates ordinary organizations from truly champion organizations. Now that the path has been opened, do you accelerate with everything? Do you try to turn this good phase into an immediate race, whatever the cost? Or do you make the less flashy choice, the choice that almost no one celebrates the day it happens, but which could be the choice that keeps your title window alive for much longer? Today, the Celtics appear to be at exactly that point. Because, at the same time that the team shows strength, delivers defensive intensity, and proves to be competitive despite facing adversity, there is a reality that remains on paper, the financial reality of the NBA. And I know that, just saying that, a lot of people turn up their noses. Money, taxes, that's an accountant's business, not basketball. But in today's NBA, basketball and spreadsheets go together, and whoever ignores this will pay dearly. Sometimes he pays dearly in draft picks. Sometimes it pays dearly in squad depth, and it often pays dearly by losing exactly the kind of rotation player who decides playoff series when no one is paying attention. So let's go by parts, because what is circulating as new report and unexpected change is not the kind of rumor that talks about a star arriving with fireworks. It's the opposite of that. It's a strategic idea, one of those moves that seem small, but that change the entire board. The proposal within this scenario involves a 3-team exchange that would send Anfernee Simons, or Simons, as many people are calling him, to another destination and bring back Kyle Anderson and Nick Richards, with a side effect that, for the board, could be the real objective: reducing the salary bill, escaping the luxury tax, and mainly, protecting the team's flexibility for the moment when the franchise really wants to be at its peak. And here, I want to make a deal with you. You don't need to love the idea to understand the logic. The fan is not obliged to like every exchange. But if you've been following the NBA for a while, you know that great title windows don't die just because of an injury or a poorly played series. Many title windows die due to poorly planned decisions. Decisions made in the heat of a good sequence, with the heart speaking louder than the future. Now, why would the Celtics do that, is the obvious question. And she has two responses, one emotional and one rational. The emotional one is simple, because the team has proven that it can compete, and this increases the temptation to do something now. The rationale is more complex, because competing now doesn't mean you need to tie yourself down for 5 years to try to win in one. And that's where the luxury tax and repeater tax come in. The luxury tax is, basically, the tax that the league charges when its squad costs above a certain limit. Until then, a lot of people think, okay, pay, and that's it. But the problem is repetition. The longer you spend above this limit, the heavier the cost becomes. And the repeater tax exists precisely to punish repeat offenses. What does this mean in practice? It means that you can build a super team, spend a lot for a period of time. But if you don't reset that clock at some point, there comes a time when money stops being just money. It becomes a sporting limitation. It becomes a restriction of movement. It becomes difficult to maintain a deep squad. It becomes that situation where you look at your bench and realize that there is no way to replace an outlet without sacrificing another important piece. And let me tell you something in all sincerity, this is exactly how franchises with talent become franchises with regret. Because it doesn't happen overnight. It's silent wear, an exception you miss here, a contract that you cannot assume there, a role player that you don't renew because the total cost was absurd. And before you know it, the window that seemed huge has become narrow. Within this trade rumor, the calculation is clear. By moving Simons and bringing Anderson and Richards, Boston would save around $15 to $16 million and put itself below the tax line. This is not change. That's air to breathe. This is making space to act freely when the right moment arrives. And what is the right moment in the speech of those who think big? That's when your main core is complete, healthy, aligned, ready for a real race. That's when you can look at the cast and say, now I know who I am and what I need. Flexibility at this point is worth its weight in gold. But like every strategic idea, it comes with pain. And the pain here is moving a player who, within this scenario, did not necessarily deserve to be changed. I always think it's important to say this because the internet narrative sometimes turns any rumor into condemnation. If the name appears, it's because it's bad. And it's not like that. In the NBA, many trades happen not because the player is bad, but because the contract is useful to build a greater solution. A contract can be movable for several reasons: age, value, duration, game profile, market fit. And if you are an organization that is serious about the future, you need to know how to separate performance from strategic utility. In this context, Simons appears as a piece that can make the financial engineering of the movement viable, not because he failed, but because his type of contract can open doors. It's the type of cold decision that the board needs to make when thinking as a franchise and not as fans. But at the same time, the exchange cannot make the team worse. And that's where the detail comes in that many people ignore when they see less famous names arriving. Kyle Anderson is not a headline. He's not going to dominate the news for a week, but he is the type of player that coaches love in April and May. Versatile, intelligent, disciplined, capable of defending multiple positions, keeping possession alive, making the right reading without needing the ball all the time. It's the type of play that increases the quality of your team without increasing your squad's ego. And that in a competitive environment is worth a lot, because there is a huge difference between having talent and being fit. Anderson, in this profile, comes in as a player who provides stability. You know what he delivers. You know he won't demand protagonism. You know that in playoffs, he can fulfill his role without messing up what the team has already built. Nick Richards enters in response to a demand that always reappears when the calendar tightens: size and rim protection. In the regular season, you can survive with certain limitations. In playoffs, you pay for each of them. A center who can hold minutes, protect the painted area, compete for rebounds, and not be a constant target on the other side can be the type of detail that changes a game and sometimes changes a series. So if the change is designed to maintain the competitive level and at the same time improve the franchise's power of maneuver, it starts to make sense. Now, about the structure itself. Why 3 teams? Because exchanges like this rarely work out in a straight line. When the objective involves salary, taxes, and balance of interests, the third team comes in to absorb the contract, compensate with choices, and align what each person wants at the moment. In this rumor, the construction mentioned involves the Utah Jazz and Phoenix Suns as participants. Utah, in a reconstruction scenario, could be interested in a young player with value and in receiving draft compensation. Phoenix, in turn, it would be a smaller adjustment, more linked to squad management and choices, without radically changing its immediate ambition. And Boston would make the main move, exchange a contract for 2 names that support rotation and, as a bonus, clean up the sheet. Do you notice how each side has its own logic? And that's what makes an exchange like this possible. Nobody is doing charity. Each franchise is trying to solve its own puzzle. The most interesting point for me isn't even the player package. It is the symbol of what it represents. Because an organization that is winning above expectations has 2 natural temptations. The first is the temptation of shine, the temptation to announce something big, conquer the news cycle, inflame the crowd with an immediate promise. The second is the temptation of fear. Fear that the good phase will pass. Fear of wasting a moment. Fear of looking back and thinking we could have gone stronger. And the mature decision is in the middle of these 2 temptations. The mature decision is to understand that not every opportunity needs to become an urgency. Sometimes the winning move is the one that keeps your door open to multiple possibilities, rather than choosing just one and closing off the rest. When you think about title window, you need to think about continuity, inability to adjust, being able to react to the market, not being held hostage by the cast itself. And again, this is not about being cheap, it's about being sustainable. Teams that remain at the top for several years almost always make moves like this at some point. They forego a headline to gain 3 seasons of freedom. They exchange a euphoric now for a well-planned tomorrow. And this is much more difficult than it seems, because it requires holding back anxiety. And here I want to ask you honestly, as if we were having a conversation looking at the game. Do you prefer a movement that generates noise and likes on the same day? Or do you prefer a movement that 2 years from now you will look at and say, I'm glad they did that? Because it is this type of choice that separates the team that wins once from the team that is always in the fight. The Celtics, historically, are a franchise that thinks big, and what this type of rumor suggests is exactly that. An organization trying to be disciplined at a time when it would be easy to lose discipline. If this movement happens, or if something similar to it gains momentum, I wouldn't interpret it as giving up on the season. I would interpret it as the opposite. I would interpret it as management saying, we believe we can compete now, but we want to compete even better later without sacrificing what is essential. Because in the end, the goal is not just to be in the playoffs. The goal is to get to the playoffs with the right pieces at the right time and the ability to adjust if something goes wrong along the way. And when the core is complete, when the franchise is ready for that definitive run, the flexibility that today seems boring becomes the difference between almost and champion. Now, to close, I want to make 2 ideas very clear. The first, if you only analyze exchanges by name and prominence, you lose half the game. The game off the court decides a lot of what happens on the court. The second, not every exchange needs to be exciting to be a winner. Sometimes the best trade-off is the one you only truly understand later, when it gives you options you wouldn't have otherwise. So, I really want to know your opinion. If you were in the position of the Celtics front office, would you make this type of move? Would you accept a silent exchange with less flashy names in exchange for a more flexible future and a more sustainable path to competing for titles for several years? Tell me in the comments, do you prefer the movement that impresses today or the movement that protects tomorrow? And if you like this type of analysis, which combines the game on the court with the game behind the scenes, Stay with me, here on the Celtics Talk Show, because the trade deadline is not about rumors, it's about decision. And decisions, in the NBA, are what change history. And here's where I want to close with you in the most direct way possible. The Celtics aren't just trying to win today, the Celtics are trying to keep winning tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and for years. Because a title isn't just born from a great night, a good sequence, or a loud headline. A title is born from difficult, silent, and often unpopular decisions. Those that only make sense when the calendar tightens and the pressure turns into playoffs. If this exchange gets off the ground, it is not a sign of weakness. It's a message to the entire league. Boston is playing chess, while a lot of people are still playing checkers. It's the difference between a team that tries to be champion and a team that organizes itself to dominate an era. And that's why this decision could define whether the Celtics will be remembered as a champion of a moment or as a constant power that returns year after year, after the year, to compete for everything. Now I want to hear from you. Would you make this switch? Would you trade the noise of the headline for the long-term security of a winning project? Comment below, because I read everything, and your opinion helps a lot to guide future analyses. And pay attention. If you really want to understand what is behind these moves, what makes sense in the squad, how each adjustment affects the game and the future of the Celtics, I left a complete sequence of videos in the Celtics Analysis playlist. It will be in the pinned comment. Click there now and watch, because if you watch these videos in sequence, you will see the Celtics in a different light. Go to the pinned comment, open the playlist Celtics Analyses, and stay with me. Because this season's story is being written now, and the next move could change everything.